Imagine stepping onto a stage where nightmares come alive, where the villain is the hero, and the man behind the monster is a preacher's son. That's the world of Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper's journey into becoming one of rock's most iconic figures is one of transformation, rebellion, and pure theatrical genius. Born Vincent Furnier in Detroit, Michigan, his early life was far from the shock rock persona that would later define his legacy. In his conversation on The Big Interview, Alice opened up about how an ordinary church-going boy evolved into a legendary performer who redefined the limits of rock and roll. He explained that his transformation wasn't just about makeup and guillotines. It was about creating a character that embodied every parent's worst nightmare and every teenager's fantasy of rebellion. Growing up in a religious family, Vincent's early years were shaped by faith and structure. His father was a preacher, and his grandfather was an evangelist, so the church was central to his upbringing. As a kid, he was shy, quiet, and fascinated by art and music. He didn't imagine himself one day becoming a shock rock icon. His love for performance began in high school when he and his friends formed a band called the Earwigs. They were inspired by the Beatles, who had taken the world by storm. The band dressed up like the Fab Four and performed covers for their school talent show. To their surprise, they won, and that victory planted the seed of possibility in Vincent's mind that maybe he was meant for the stage. As their ambitions grew, the Earwigs evolved into the Spiders and later into Nas. Eventually, they would take on the name that would forever change Vincent's destiny, Alice Cooper. The name came about almost accidentally. They wanted something that sounded sweet and innocent, but also ironic when paired with the dark, theatrical image they were developing. Vincent found the contrast between a name like Alice Cooper and the horror-inspired stage show fascinating. Over time, that name stopped being just the band's identity and became his identity. Alice Cooper, the man and the persona, merged into one. He explained that when he first began performing as Alice, it was a theatrical experiment. He wanted to create something that combined the power of rock with the drama of a horror movie. The stage became a place where he could bring nightmares to life. Fake blood, snakes, electric chairs, and guillotines, all part of a carefully crafted show that was as much about storytelling as it was about music. What most people didn't understand, however, was that Alice Cooper was not who Vincent was in everyday life. The character was a creation, a way to express everything wild, chaotic, and forbidden in a safe and artistic way. Offstage, he was polite, humble, and grounded, but once the lights went down and the music started, Alice came alive. In the interview, Alice revealed that the line between himself and his alter ego sometimes blurred. The more successful the character became, the more he felt himself slipping into that identity. Fame, fortune, and excess soon followed, and with them came the temptations that nearly destroyed him. The 1970s were wild years, filled with drinking and chaos, and at one point, he admitted that alcohol took over his life. Alice Cooper became known not just for shocking audiences, but also for his offstage behavior, which mirrored the outrageousness of his performances. It reached a point where Vincent could barely tell where he ended and Alice began. Eventually, his drinking spiraled so far out of control that it landed him in the hospital. He realized that if he didn't make a change, he might not survive. It was at that low point that he rediscovered his faith and decided to fight his way back. With the support of his wife Cheryl, he got sober and redefined what it meant to be Alice Cooper. Sobriety didn't mean giving up the theatrics or the dark humor that fans loved. Instead, it allowed him to approach his art with a clearer mind and a sharper vision. He began to see Alice not as a curse, but as a creation that could live alongside his true self. Alice spoke about how the character gave him freedom. On stage, he could explore fear, evil, and rebellion in ways that felt cathartic. He described the show as an escape for both him and his fans, a place where they could face their darkest thoughts safely through art. Every prop, every scream. Every dramatic execution had a purpose. It wasn't random chaos, but a reflection of society's fascination with darkness. He understood early on that shock and horror could be powerful storytelling tools when used with intelligence and humor. Throughout his career, Alice Cooper has never been afraid to evolve. He's collaborated with artists across generations, from Johnny Depp to Marilyn Manson, showing that his influence continues to shape rock and entertainment. What makes him so unique is his ability to balance spectacle with sincerity. He never lost touch with the audience or the human side of his art. Even after decades in the spotlight, he remains humble and grateful, still amazed that a kid from Detroit who once sang Beatles covers could become a global icon. He credits his longevity to a few key things: faith, family, and a sense of humor. He talked about how his marriage to Cheryl has been one of the anchors in his life. The two have been together for decades, and she has often joined him on stage as part of the performance. Their bond has helped him stay grounded through the highs and lows of fame. Alice also maintains that his relationship with God remains strong, and that his faith continues to guide his choices. For him, there's no contradiction between being a Christian and playing a villainous character on stage. It's all about context and intention. In reflecting on his legacy, Alice Cooper admitted that he never expected to become a pioneer of theatrical rock. When he started, the industry didn't know what to make of him. Critics were shocked, parents were outraged, and even some fans didn't know whether to laugh or scream. But that was the point. He wanted to provoke emotion, to challenge expectations, and to make people think. Over time, his vision helped open the door for countless other performers who saw that music could be more than just sound. It could be performance art. As the interview wrapped up, Alice said that becoming Alice Cooper was never about fame or rebellion for its own sake. It was about creating something unforgettable, something that would live on long after the lights went out. Today, he stands as one of the few artists who can say they changed the face of rock and roll. He's living proof that sometimes the wildest ideas, the ones that seem too strange or too risky, are the ones that end up changing everything. Alice Cooper didn't just invent a persona, he invented a genre. And even now, decades later, the man behind the makeup continues to remind the world that rock and roll will always have room for a little darkness, a little theater, and a lot of heart.